The most dangerous loss in a man's life is not always the loss of money, position, friendship, or opportunity. Those things may be recovered. The more serious loss begins when he can no longer look at his own decisions with approval. He knows what he should have done, yet he did less. He knows what he should have refused, yet he accepted it. He knows the duty that belonged to him, yet he walked around it. No crowd may notice. No public shame may follow. But inside, a silent verdict is being written. The man begins to feel smaller in his own presence. That is how self-respect leaves, not through one loud collapse, but through quiet agreements with weakness. Self-respect is not pride. Pride wants to be seen as important. Self-respect wants to be worthy when no one is looking. Pride is satisfied by appearance. Self-respect demands evidence. Pride may be fed by praise, position, clothing, or applause. Self-respect is fed only by conduct that agrees with conscience. A man respects himself when he does what he knows is right, especially when the easier path is available. He loses respect for himself when he repeatedly abandons his own standard and then invents excuses to make the abandonment appear reasonable. There are 5 ways this loss commonly begins. A man breaks his word to himself. He accepts treatment that violates his dignity. He avoids a difficult duty he knows belongs to him. He fills his speech with complaint, excuse, and defeat. He remains among people who continually call forth the weakest side of his nature. None of these habits destroys him at once. That is why they are dangerous. Each begins as a small permission. Each permission lowers the inner standard. Soon the man is living beneath what he once believed was worthy, and he becomes accustomed to the distance between his knowledge and his conduct. The first way a man quietly loses respect for himself is by giving himself commands he does not obey. He says he will begin at a certain hour, then delays without necessity. He says he will finish a duty, then leaves it when the work becomes dull. He says he will govern an appetite, restrain his tongue, preserve his money, or practice his skill. But the first discomfort overturns the decision. Because no one else heard the promise, he treats the failure as private and harmless. Yet the mind heard it. The mind also witnessed the surrender. It records every order and every act that follows. A man cannot repeatedly disobey his own best judgment without weakening the authority of his own voice. At first he says, "Tomorrow I will do better," and believes it. After enough broken promises, the statement loses force. He says, "I will finish this time," but doubt rises before the work has begun. He calls this lack of confidence, as though confidence vanished mysteriously. It did not vanish. It was spent through broken agreements. Confidence is trust in action, and trust declines whenever words and conduct repeatedly separate. Many men try to repair this damage with a larger promise. They become disgusted with themselves and declare that everything will change immediately. They create a severe plan, promise perfect discipline, and feel powerful for an evening. The emotion gives relief, but relief is not reform. When the plan proves too large, they collapse, and the deeper mind receives one more piece of evidence that their word cannot be trusted. Grand promises made to escape shame often create greater shame. Stop making promises for the pleasure of hearing them. A promise is not meant to produce emotion. It is meant to direct conduct. If action does not follow, the promise becomes a form of self-deception. Some men use tomorrow as a hiding place. They say tomorrow will contain the courage, discipline, energy, and honesty they refuse to use today. Tomorrow becomes rich in imagination, while today remains poor in action. But destiny is not built in imagined days. It is built in the hour presently under command. Begin repairing self-trust with one definite agreement. Choose a duty small enough to complete and important enough to matter. Give it an hour. Begin at that hour. Finish the appointed measure. Do not announce it. Do not ask for admiration. Let the completed act speak privately to the mind. Then make another agreement and keep it. Self-respect returns through evidence, and evidence is accumulated one act at a time. If you have broken your word many times, speak less and perform more. Do not say, I will become completely disciplined. Say, I will complete this work before I seek ease. Do not say, I will never be afraid again. Say, I will take this necessary step while fear is present. Do not say, I will change my whole life tonight. Say, I will bring this one neglected matter into order. The mind does not need another speech. It needs a record it can believe. Do not despise small, kept promises. A man may think rising at the appointed hour, answering a neglected letter, recording an expense, or finishing a simple task is too ordinary to rebuild character. He is mistaken. Character is built from ordinary obedience. The great public act is often only the visible result of hundreds of private decisions. A man becomes dependable in crisis because he practiced dependability when the stakes appeared small. Every kept promise restores authority. The mind begins to say, when this man decides, he acts. That belief changes posture, speech, and energy. He becomes less hesitant because his own record supports him. He no longer needs constant pressure from outside. He has begun developing government within. The man who can govern himself becomes capable of carrying greater freedom because freedom no longer means permission to drift. The true test of a promise comes when keeping it becomes inconvenient. Anyone can follow a decision while desire agrees. Character appears when desire changes. You plan to work, but weariness arrives. You plan to preserve money, but vanity offers an attractive purchase. You plan to speak calmly, but another person wounds your pride. You plan to continue, but the result is delayed. This is the hour when self-respect is either strengthened or sold. Do not ask, what do I feel like doing? Ask, what did I decide when my judgment was clear? Feelings have a place, but they must not become dictators. A man who obeys every changing mood cannot respect himself for long because he never knows which version of himself will appear. The disciplined man may adjust wisely when facts change, but he does not abandon a sound decision merely because comfort has presented an argument. The second way a man quietly loses respect for himself is by accepting treatment he knows is beneath his dignity. This does not mean becoming proud, combative, or offended by every careless word. A man of strength does not waste himself in small quarrels. He can overlook ignorance, forgive mistakes, and remain calm when another person behaves poorly. But there is a difference between patience and fear. Patience is chosen from strength. Fear remains silent because it is afraid of the cost of standing upright. A man knows when he is enduring for a worthy purpose and when he is surrendering to avoid discomfort. He may tell himself he is keeping peace, yet inwardly he knows he is purchasing peace with self-betrayal. He accepts repeated contempt because he fears losing companionship. He accepts dishonesty because he fears losing an arrangement. He accepts humiliation because he fears rejection. He smiles outwardly while resentment grows inwardly because conscience knows he has abandoned a necessary boundary. Resentment often develops where courage should have spoken. The other person may indeed be wrong, but the bitterness becomes deeper because the man also knows he permitted the wrong to continue. He blames them for crossing a line he never defended. Each time he remains silent from fear, the inner voice becomes weaker. Eventually, he may no longer know whether he is kind or merely afraid. A boundary is not anger. It is not revenge. It is a clear statement of what you will participate in and what you will refuse. It may be spoken calmly. In fact, calmness often gives it greater weight. Say what is true without insult. State what must change. Then be prepared to support the words with conduct. A boundary that is repeatedly spoken and never enforced becomes another broken promise. Do not threaten what you are unwilling to carry out. Empty threats weaken dignity, just as broken promises weaken confidence. If you say a certain treatment is unacceptable, yet continue accepting it without change, both the other person and your own mind learn that your words contain no consequence. Speak less. Be clear. Act according to the principle stated. You must be willing to lose what can be kept only through the surrender of self-respect. This may include approval, companionship, favor, or opportunity. That price can feel severe, but examine the arrangement honestly. If keeping it requires you to become smaller, dishonest, fearful, or continually humiliated, then you are already paying heavily. Some doors remain open only because a man agrees to enter bent over. Stand upright. This does not mean you should abandon every difficult relationship, duty, or employment at the first sign of discomfort. Responsibility may require endurance. A family obligation, business agreement, or temporary hardship may demand patience and sacrifice, but endurance must serve a definite purpose. It should be joined with a plan, a principle, and a clear understanding of what is being built. Endless submission without purpose is not virtue. It is fear wearing the clothing of patience. Learn the difference between humility and humiliation. Humility allows you to admit error and receive correction. Humiliation demands that you accept contempt as though you possess no worth. Humility says, I may be wrong, and I will learn. Humiliation says, I must accept whatever is done because I have no right to stand. A man of self-respect remains teachable without becoming servile. He can apologize without crawling. He can correct himself without surrendering his dignity. Do not ask others to respect standards you refuse to practice. If you expect honesty, be honest. If you expect punctuality, honor time. If you expect your word to be taken seriously, take the word of others seriously. If you expect your boundaries to be respected, respect the proper boundaries of those around you. Self-respect is not a demand for special treatment. It is an agreement to live by principles worthy of mutual dignity. The third way a man quietly loses respect for himself is by avoiding the difficult duty he knows is his. Every man has such a duty. It may be a conversation he must face, an error he must admit, a debt he must organize, a skill he must learn, a decision he must make, or a beginning he has delayed. He knows the matter is waiting. Yet because it carries discomfort, he moves around it. He keeps busy with lesser tasks and tells himself that activity is progress. But the neglected duty remains at the center of the mind like an unpaid account. Avoidance does not remove the duty. It gives the duty greater power. The task follows the man into other work. It sits behind his rest. It makes simple pleasures feel less satisfying because conscience knows something important is being evaded. Part of the mind must constantly guard the place he refuses to enter. This drains concentration and weakens peace. The longer the delay continues, the larger the duty appears. Imagination adds consequences that may not exist. Shame joins fear because the man knows he has waited too long. Soon he is no longer afraid only of the task. He is afraid of facing the evidence of his own delay. A small responsibility becomes a symbol of personal weakness. Action reduces the shadow. The neglected account becomes less frightening when the figures are placed on paper. The difficult conversation becomes less powerful after the first truthful sentence. The skill becomes less mysterious after the first hour of study. The decision becomes clearer after facts replace vague fear. Fear thrives in fog. Action introduces measurement. Do not wait until courage feels complete. Courage often comes after movement begins. Take the part of the duty that can be taken now. Gather the information. Write the first line. Make the appointment. Admit the error. Ask the necessary question. One definite act changes your position. You are no longer running from the duty. You are moving toward it. A man restores self-respect each time he turns toward what fear told him to avoid. The entire problem may not be solved at once, but a new fact has been created. He faced reality. The mind remembers this. It begins to say, this man may feel fear, but he does not have to obey it. That belief becomes courage for the next duty. Do not confuse courage with recklessness. Courage does not refuse preparation. It gathers facts, considers consequences, and acts under judgment. Recklessness runs without thought. Avoidance thinks without action. Courage joins thought and action. It does not demand certainty where certainty is impossible. It demands enough wisdom to take the next responsible step. Some men avoid duty because they fear failure. Others avoid it because they fear success and the responsibility success may bring. If they begin seriously, they can no longer hide behind potential. Their ability will be tested. Their habits will be exposed. Their future may require more discipline. So they remain in preparation forever, protecting the comforting belief that they could succeed if they ever truly tried. This is another form of self-betrayal. Potential deserves respect only when it is being converted into service. Unused ability is not an achievement. A man may possess a fine mind, a strong voice, a skilled hand, or a worthy idea, but if fear keeps it hidden, the possession becomes a burden. He knows what might have been done. Every year of delay makes that knowledge heavier. Begin before you feel fully prepared, but continue preparing as you move. Let action reveal what study must correct. Let experience show where skill is weak. Let failure become information instead of identity. A man who acts, studies, corrects, and returns will advance farther than the man who waits for a perfect hour that never comes. These first three losses are tied together. Break your word often enough, and you stop trusting your decisions. Accept indignity often enough, and you stop trusting your worth. Avoid difficult duty often enough, and you stop trusting your courage. Then the damage begins to enter your language. You speak less like a man under purpose and more like a man preparing an explanation for defeat. That is where the fourth loss begins. Because the words a man repeats do not merely describe his condition, they teach him what kind of man he expects to remain. This is why the fourth way a man quietly loses respect for himself is through the language of complaint, excuse, and defeat. He begins by speaking carelessly, but he ends by believing what he has spoken. He says, "Nothing ever works for me." He says, "I was not given the right chance." He says, "Other men have advantages I do not have." He says, "I cannot change." He says, "This is simply my lot." At first, these words may seem like relief. They allow him to explain his present condition without confronting his responsibility. But every repeated excuse becomes a chain, and every chain worn long enough begins to feel like part of the man. A man must be careful with his speech, because speech is thought made visible. When he speaks defeat over and over, he is not merely informing others of his pain, he is instructing his own mind to expect more defeat. The mind listens. It gathers evidence for the statement. If the man says, "I never finish," the mind remembers every unfinished task and ignores every moment of progress. If he says, "I have no discipline," the mind presents every surrender as proof. If he says, "People like me do not rise," the mind begins closing doors before he even reaches them. Words become commands when repeated with emotion. This does not mean a man should lie about hardship. A strong man does not pretend that difficulty is pleasure. He does not call poverty, abundance, weakness, strength, or failure victory before any lesson has been taken from it. That is not faith, that is confusion. But there is a difference between honest recognition and defeated speech. Honest recognition says, "This condition is difficult, and I must find the cause, the lesson, and the next action." Defeated speech says, "This condition proves I am finished." One preserves command. The other surrenders it. Complaint becomes dangerous because it often feels justified. The man may have suffered unfairly. He may have been misunderstood, overlooked, denied, betrayed, or delayed. His pain may contain real facts. But complaint does not become useful merely because the pain is real. The question is not only, did something wrong happen? The question is, what is this speech doing to my power? If the speech produces bitterness, passivity, envy, and retreat, then it is weakening the man even if the facts are accurate. Truth must be used as a tool for construction, not as a blanket for weakness. A man may speak of his wounds so often that he begins living from them. He becomes known by what hurt him rather than by what he is building. Every conversation returns to the injustice. Every delay is explained by the past. Every duty is made heavier by resentment. In time, the wound becomes his identity. He may receive sympathy, but sympathy cannot replace self-respect. Sympathy may comfort a man for an hour. Purpose must rebuild him for a lifetime. Excuse is more subtle than complaint. Complaint says, "Life has been unfair." Excuse says, "Therefore I am not responsible." That is where the poison enters. A hardship may explain where the road became difficult, but it does not give a man permission to abandon the road entirely. If he lacked instruction, he must seek instruction. If he was delayed, he must begin from the present hour. If he failed, he must learn the law he violated. If he was betrayed, he must become wiser without becoming bitter. Excuse turns pain into a permanent exemption from effort. Self-respect cannot survive there. A man begins to respect himself again when he changes the question. Instead of asking, "Why was this done to me?" he asks, "What must now be done by me?" Instead of asking, "Who is responsible for my wound?" he asks, "What responsibility remains in my hands?" Instead of asking, "Why did I not receive help?" he asks, "What knowledge, skill, or alliance must I now seek?" These questions do not deny suffering. They rescue the man from worshiping it. Your words must become servants of your purpose. Do not allow your mouth to become a workshop for defeat. Before speaking, ask what your words are building. Are they building courage or fear? Are they building clarity or confusion? Are they building responsibility or blame? Are they building endurance or surrender? A man cannot speak like a prisoner every day and expect to think like a builder. He must train speech to agree with the life he intends to construct. Replace weak speech with accurate speech. Do not say, "I cannot." Say, "I have not yet learned the method." Do not say, "I always fail." Say, "I failed here, and I must discover why." Do not say, "Nothing can be done." Say, "What can be done with what is available?" Do not say, I am behind. Say, I will use the hour still in my possession. Accuracy is powerful because it removes both exaggeration and surrender. It sees difficulty, but it also sees possibility. A man who speaks accurately begins thinking accurately. He stops making his troubles larger through dramatic language. He stops making his strength smaller through careless words. He stops granting the past authority it does not possess. He begins training the mind to search for causes, remedies, and next steps. This is the language of command. It is plain, direct, and useful. But speech alone is not enough. Words must be joined with conduct. If a man says, I am responsible, yet avoids responsibility, his speech becomes another deception. If he says, I will learn, yet refuses study, the words are empty. If he says, I will continue, yet quits when comfort calls, the declaration becomes cheap. Therefore, when you change your speech, immediately attach an action to it. Say, I will correct this. Then make the correction. Say, I will prepare, then begin preparation. Say, I will not surrender to fear, then take the step fear has delayed. Self-respect returns when a man hears himself speaking truth and sees himself obeying it. The agreement between speech and action is powerful. It closes the gap through which shame has been entering. The man no longer uses words to escape reality. He uses words to command himself toward it. He becomes less interested in sounding strong and more interested in becoming strong. The fifth way a man quietly loses respect for himself is by remaining in associations that call forth his lowest nature. No man's mind remains untouched by the company he keeps. Association has a silent power. It shapes what appears normal, what appears possible, what appears foolish, and what appears worthy. If a man lives among complainers, complaint begins to sound like wisdom. If he lives among cowards, caution begins to disguise fear. If he lives among dishonest men, dishonesty begins to seem practical. If he lives among idle men, wasted time begins to appear harmless. The atmosphere enters him little by little. This does not mean he must become proud or abandon compassion. A man of strength can love people who are struggling. He can serve, encourage, and remain kind. But there is a difference between helping a man rise and lying down beside him in the mud. There is a difference between compassion and surrender of standards. If an association continually makes you weaker, more bitter, less disciplined, less truthful, and less loyal to your purpose, then it is costing more than it is giving. Many men lose self-respect because they know the association is weakening them, yet they remain for comfort. They do not want to be alone. They do not want to be misunderstood. They do not want to be accused of changing. So they continue sitting at tables where their purpose is mocked, joining conversations that poison their minds, accepting habits that pull them backward, and laughing at conduct they inwardly know is beneath them. Later, when they are alone, they feel the loss. They know they participated against conscience. A man must ask, who do I become in this company? That question is more important than whether the company is amusing, familiar, or easy. Do you become more courageous or more timid? More disciplined or more careless? More grateful or more resentful? More truthful or more willing to pretend? More ambitious in a noble sense or more satisfied with excuses? Association is measured by its effect upon character. There are people who do not merely disagree with your growth, they depend upon your weakness. If you become disciplined, they feel exposed. If you stop complaining, their favorite bond with you is broken. If you begin preserving money, they accuse you of pride. If you raise your standard, they remind you of your past. They do not always do this from malice. Sometimes your change disturbs their comfort, but whether the motive is malice or insecurity, the effect may be the same. They invite you backward. Do not argue endlessly with those who are committed to your old identity. Let conduct speak. If they cannot accept the man you are becoming, increase distance with dignity. You need not hate them. You need not condemn them. But you must not hand them authority over your future. A man who requires permission from every old companion will never build a new life. Growth demands loyalty to purpose over loyalty to the expectations of the crowd. This is not isolation. Isolation may become another weakness if it is driven by bitterness or fear. A man needs good association. He needs minds that challenge him, correct him, encourage him, and enlarge his vision. He needs the company of those who respect truth, work, courage, discipline, and service. One strong association can awaken a sleeping ambition. One honest counselor can prevent a costly error. One group united around worthy purpose can multiply strength beyond what one man could do alone. Seek men whose standards make you uncomfortable in the right way. Not men who humiliate you, but men who call you upward. Men whose punctuality exposes your delay. Men whose order exposes your confusion. Men whose courage exposes your caution. Men whose service exposes your selfishness. Men whose faith exposes your doubt. Such association may sting the pride, but it strengthens the character. A weak man avoids it because he wants comfort. A growing man welcomes it because he wants development. Where such company is not near, keep company with great principles. Sit with serious books. Study the lives of builders, inventors, leaders, and men who overcame defeat through persistence and organized effort. Let their example become a counsel in your mind. You are not condemned to the level of the nearest conversation. A man may live in a poor mental climate and still choose better thoughts for his own house. But do not merely admire great men. Study the causes behind their strength. What did they repeatedly do? What did they refuse? What did they sacrifice? How did they respond to failure? How did they govern time, money, speech, and association? Admiration without application becomes entertainment. Application becomes transformation. The purpose of studying strength is to reproduce its principles in your own conduct. A man must also examine the association he keeps with his own thoughts. Inner company can be as powerful as outer company. If he spends the day with resentment in his mind, he has kept company with an enemy. If he entertains fear for hours without challenging it, he has sat with a cowardly advisor. If he repeats envy, shame, and defeat, he has invited a weak counsel to govern him. Outer company matters, but inner company is constant. Guard it. Let your mind become a room where only useful counselors remain. A thought may enter, but it must prove its value. Does it instruct? Does it warn with purpose? Does it strengthen? Does it lead to action? If not, dismiss it. Do not let old failure speak all afternoon. Do not let fear deliver long speeches without evidence. Do not let envy sit at the head of the table. You would not invite a thief to guard your property. Do not invite destructive thoughts to guard your destiny. These 5 losses, broken promises, surrendered dignity, avoided duty, defeated speech, and weakening association work together. One feeds another. When a man breaks promises, he loses confidence. When he loses confidence, he accepts less from others. When he accepts less, he avoids the duty of standing upright. When he avoids duty, he begins speaking excuses. When he speaks excuses, he seeks company that agrees with him. The circle becomes a prison, but it can be broken at any point by a definite decision followed by action. Begin where the evidence is clearest. If your word to yourself is weak, keep one promise today. If your dignity has been surrendered, establish one boundary calmly and firmly. If a duty is being avoided, take the first measurable step. If your speech has become defeated, replace complaint with a question that leads to action. If your company weakens you, reduce its authority and seek a higher influence. Do not wait for all 5 areas to become perfect. Begin with one act of command. Self-respect does not return through self-condemnation. Condemnation may create pain, but pain alone is not progress. A man may feel terrible about himself and still change nothing. Self-respect returns when pain becomes instruction and instruction becomes conduct. The question is not, how long can I punish myself for what I have allowed? The question is, what will I now require from myself because I have learned the cost of allowing it? Do not be discouraged if the old pattern speaks again. It will. The broken promise will ask for another postponement. The humiliating arrangement will ask for another silent surrender. The difficult duty will ask to be delayed. The defeated words will rise to the tongue. The old company will invite the old man back. This does not mean you have failed. It means the old government is seeking its throne. Meet it with a new law. Say, my word will be kept. Say, my dignity will not be sold for approval. Say, my duty will be faced. Say, my speech will serve my purpose. Say, my associations will call me upward. Then prove each statement in conduct. The proof is what matters. A man cannot rebuild self-respect with phrases alone. He must become evidence of the new command. The process may begin quietly. No one may notice the first promise kept. No one may applaud the first boundary. No one may admire the first difficult duty faced. No one may hear the complaint you refuse to speak. No one may understand the company you chose to leave. But you will know, and that knowledge is the first coin of recovered self-respect. A man who respects himself stands differently, even before circumstances change. His eyes become clearer because he is no longer hiding from his own conscience. His decisions become firmer because his word has begun to regain authority. His speech becomes cleaner because he no longer wishes to poison his own future. His work improves because he has stopped making excuses for low effort. His associations improve because he no longer feels at home among influences that shrink him. This is not pride. It is restoration. It is the return of a man to his rightful command over himself. He may still have much to repair. He may still carry consequences from earlier neglect. He may still face debts, duties, broken trust, and unfinished work. But he is no longer the same man who created them. He has begun to live from a higher command, and a higher command changes everything that follows. The world may not immediately change its opinion of him, but he must not depend upon the world's quick recognition. Let the record grow. Let the kept promises accumulate. Let the boundaries stand. Let the difficult duties be faced one by one. Let the speech become constructive. Let the associations improve. Over time, the outer evidence will begin to agree with the inner decision. And as that evidence grows, the man discovers that self-respect was never something to be begged from the crowd. It was never something another person could permanently grant him. It was built in the private court of conscience, where his decisions, actions, and standards stood as witnesses. When those witnesses testify in his favor, he becomes strong in a way that applause cannot create and criticism cannot easily destroy. So do not fear the quiet work. Recover your word. Recover your dignity. Recover your courage. Recover your speech. Recover your associations. Each recovery returns a portion of the man you were meant to be. And once a man begins recovering respect for himself, he no longer needs to chase every outward sign of worth. He carries worth in his conduct, and conduct becomes the foundation upon which a stronger destiny can finally be built. Yet the work is not complete when a man merely identifies the 5 ways he has been losing respect for himself. Recognition is only the opening of the door. He must now walk through it. He must turn understanding into law, law into action, and action into identity. Otherwise, he will admire the truth, agree with it, and continue living beneath it. Many men know exactly what is wrong and still remain unchanged because knowledge without decision is only another form of delay. The first task is to stop treating self-respect as a feeling. Feelings rise and fall. A man may feel strong in the morning and weak by evening. He may feel confident after praise and doubtful after criticism. If self-respect depends upon emotion, it will remain unstable. Self-respect must be built upon conduct. It must come from the knowledge that your word has weight, your boundaries have meaning, your duties are being faced, your speech is under command, and your associations serve your purpose. A man does not need to wait until he feels worthy before he begins living worthily. He must act according to the standard first. The feeling follows the evidence. If you have been breaking promises, keep one. If you have been accepting indignity, speak one necessary truth. If you have been avoiding duty, take one definite step. If your speech has become weak, refuse one complaint. If your company has been lowering you, withdraw from one destructive influence. Action begins the rebuilding. Do not attempt to recover everything in one day. That is impatience, not wisdom. A man who has spent years weakening his own authority may feel tempted to restore it through one severe effort. He creates impossible rules, demands perfection, and then condemns himself when he falls short. This repeats the old pattern. The purpose is not to create another promise that will be broken. The purpose is to build a record that can be trusted. Select one area where the damage is greatest. Perhaps you no longer trust your own word. Then begin there. Make no unnecessary promise. Speak only what you are prepared to perform. If you say you will begin at an appointed hour, begin. If you say a duty will be completed, remain until the appointed measure is done. Your first victory may appear small to others, but to the mind it is evidence that command is returning. Keep a private account of these victories. A man often remembers his failures more quickly than his progress. He can recall every delay, mistake, humiliation, and surrender, yet forget the moments when he acted with courage. This creates a false report. Record the promise kept, the boundary respected, the duty faced, the complaint refused, and the stronger association chosen. This is not vanity. It is honest accounting. A business that records only losses and ignores gains cannot be managed accurately. The same is true of character. You must know where weakness is still operating, but you must also know where strength is beginning to take hold. The mind grows according to what receives attention. Give attention to evidence of improvement, not to escape correction, but to strengthen the new identity being formed. The second task is to stop expecting the old world to recognize the new man immediately. People will often continue treating you according to your past record. If you were unreliable, they may doubt your promise. If you permitted disrespect, they may test the boundary. If you avoided responsibility, they may assume you will avoid it again. Do not become angry. Their expectation was trained by your previous conduct. Let new conduct train a new expectation. This requires patience. A man may act differently for a week and demand that everyone forget years of inconsistency. That is not reasonable. Reputation is built through repetition, and it must be rebuilt the same way. Do not waste strength insisting that others acknowledge your change. Continue changing. Let the evidence become too strong to ignore. Your task is not to win an argument about who you are becoming. Your task is to become him. There may also be people who resist your recovery because your weakness was useful to them. They could depend upon your silence. They could demand your time without respect. They could persuade you to abandon your duty. They could draw you into complaint and defeat. When you change, the arrangement changes. They may accuse you of pride, selfishness, coldness, or ingratitude. Examine the accusation honestly, but do not surrender your standard merely to restore their comfort. A boundary may disappoint someone without being wrong. A refusal may create discomfort without being cruel. A change in association may produce loneliness without being a mistake. Do not measure every decision by whether everyone approves. Measure it by truth, duty, fairness, and purpose. A man who must remain agreeable to all men will eventually become dishonest with himself. Yet be careful not to turn self-respect into hardness. Some men discover boundaries and become severe. They begin defending every preference as though it were a principle. They interpret correction as insult. They leave relationships rather than communicate. They use dignity to protect pride. This is not recovery. It is another form of fear. True self-respect is calm. It can hear criticism without collapsing. It can admit error without feeling destroyed. It can forgive without inviting repeated misuse. It can remain kind without becoming weak. It can stand firm without raising its voice. The man who must constantly announce his strength has not yet become certain of it. Strength becomes quieter as it becomes real. The third task is to face accumulated duties. A man who has avoided responsibility may have more than one matter waiting. There may be debts, unfinished work, neglected conversations, promises, repairs, or decisions. The sight of them together can create despair. Do not attempt to carry the whole pile at once. Put the duties in order. Ask which one is most urgent, which one causes the greatest loss, and which one can be acted upon immediately. Begin with facts. Fear thrives in vagueness. If money is disordered, write the figures. If work is unfinished, list the remaining steps. If a relationship requires truth, decide what must be said and what outcome you can control. If skill is lacking, find the lesson, the teacher, or the practice required. The mind becomes calmer when the unknown is given shape. Then assign action. A duty without an appointed act remains a burden. I must solve this is too broad. I will gather the records at 8 in the morning is definite. I must become more skilled is vague. I will practice this exercise for 1 hour each day creates movement. I must repair the relationship may feel overwhelming. I will speak honestly and listen without interruption gives direction. The man who faces difficult duties must accept that some results are beyond his command. He can tell the truth, but another person may still reject it. He can prepare, but opportunity may still be delayed. He can make restitution, but trust may return slowly. Self-respect does not require control over every outcome. It requires honorable control over your part. This is a vital distinction. Many men postpone action because they cannot guarantee success. They want assurance that the conversation will end well, the business will prosper, the apology will be accepted, or the effort will produce immediate reward. Life offers no such guarantee. Courage means acting rightly without demanding certainty. The man controls the cause he can plant and allows time to reveal the harvest. The fourth task is to cleanse speech. Complaint, excuse, and defeat may have become habits so familiar that the man no longer hears them. He speaks negatively without intention. He describes himself as weak, unlucky, behind, unworthy, or incapable. He repeats these words to others and then wonders why his own mind accepts them. Speech must be inspected. For one day, listen to yourself as though listening to another man. Notice every exaggeration. Notice every statement that makes your problem permanent. Notice every excuse that removes responsibility. Notice every time you speak of another person's success with envy. Notice every time you use the past to predict the future. You cannot govern speech you refuse to hear. Then begin replacement. Replace "I am always careless" with "I have practiced carelessness and I am correcting it." Replace "I cannot face this" with "I can face the next part." Replace "no one respects me" with "I will begin living in a way that commands my own respect." Replace "nothing changes" with "what cause have I planted consistently?" The purpose is not to make speech pleasant. The purpose is to make it accurate and constructive. Accurate speech does not deny failure. It places failure in its proper position. "I failed" describes an event. "I am a failure" turns the event into identity. "I acted weakly" can lead to correction. "I am weak" may become a command. Be precise. Do not allow one act, one season, or one rejection to name the whole man. Words must also be governed in the presence of anger. A man can destroy months of self-respect in one uncontrolled speech because he knows the words were beneath him. The injury may have been real, but his reaction becomes another wound. Learn to delay speech when emotion is high. Silence for an hour may protect what apology cannot fully restore. This does not mean refusing to speak necessary truth. Truth delayed forever becomes cowardice. But truth should be delivered under judgment. Ask what you are trying to accomplish. Are you trying to correct, clarify, defend, or merely wound? If the purpose is only to cause pain, the speech will reduce you even if the other person deserves correction. Self-respect is strengthened when a man remains faithful to his character while confronting wrongdoing. The fifth task is to improve association without becoming dependent upon association. A strong environment can help, but the man must eventually carry his standard within. If he behaves well only among disciplined people, his character is still borrowed. If he needs constant encouragement to continue, his command is incomplete. Good company should strengthen internal government, not replace it. Choose men whose lives provide evidence. Do not be impressed merely by confident speech. Study how they work, how they keep time, how they treat promises, how they respond to correction, and how they behave when no reward is visible. Character is revealed through consistency, not performance. Seek those whose example makes honorable conduct appear normal, but also become worthy of the company you seek. Many men desire strong allies while bringing disorder, complaint, unreliability, and selfishness into the relationship. Ask what you contribute. Do you arrive prepared? Do you keep confidence? Do you support another man's purpose without envy? Do you offer useful thought? Do you keep your word? Strong association is a mutual exchange of value and character. There is great power in a small group united around a definite purpose. Minds in harmony can increase courage, imagination, knowledge, and persistence. But harmony does not mean agreement on every detail. It means loyalty to the common aim, honesty in counsel, and respect among the members. A group without standards becomes a place where excuses multiply. A disciplined alliance becomes a force. If strong companionship is not yet available, do not use that absence as an excuse. Books can introduce you to disciplined minds. Solitude can be used for study, planning, and self-examination. Work can become your teacher. Failure can become instruction. The man who truly desires growth will search for guidance without becoming helpless, because guidance is not immediately near. The sixth task, though it stands beneath all 5 losses, is to develop definite purpose. A man loses self-respect more easily when he does not know what his life is serving. Without purpose, broken promises seem small. Boundaries seem unnecessary. Difficult duties seem avoidable. Defeated speech seems harmless. Weak associations seem comfortable. Purpose gives weight to conduct. When you know what you are building, time matters more. Your word matters more. Your mind matters more. Your associations matter more. You begin seeing that every habit either supports the aim or steals from it. Purpose creates a standard higher than temporary comfort. It says, this is not merely about today's feeling. This is about the life being formed. Write the purpose plainly. Do not fill it with vague language. What do you intend to create, contribute, master, or become? Why does it matter? Who will benefit? What character will be required? What habits must end? What knowledge must be gained? A clear purpose becomes a judge. It exposes conduct that once hid behind convenience. Review the purpose often. A purpose neglected in thought loses authority. Keep it close enough to influence the day. Before accepting an invitation, making an expense, forming an association, or giving away an hour, ask whether it serves the central aim. This does not mean every moment must be severe. Rest and recreation have value. But even rest should restore the man to purpose, not become a hiding place from it. A man recovering self-respect must also learn to forgive himself without excusing himself. These are not the same. Excuse says, the conduct does not matter. Forgiveness says, the conduct mattered, I accept responsibility, and I will not remain chained to it. Excuse permits repetition. Forgiveness makes correction possible. Some men continue punishing themselves long after they have learned the lesson. They believe shame proves sincerity. But shame that produces no useful action becomes another form of self-centeredness. The man remains occupied with his failure instead of repairing what can be repaired. He says he is unworthy, and that statement relieves him of the duty to rise. This is weakness disguised as remorse. True remorse moves. It apologizes. It repays. It corrects. It changes the habit. It creates a new standard. Then it releases the past as instruction. A man has no right to forget a lesson, but he also has no duty to remain forever beneath the event that taught it. Use the past. Do not worship it. As self-respect returns, the man will notice a change in what he can tolerate. Old habits begin feeling expensive. Empty conversation becomes tiring. Delay becomes uncomfortable. Broken promises disturb him quickly. This is progress. The inner measurement has risen. Conduct, once accepted as normal, now feels beneath the law. Do not become alarmed when this creates dissatisfaction. There is a useful dissatisfaction that drives improvement. The danger is not dissatisfaction itself, but dissatisfaction without direction. Join it to a plan. Let the discomfort reveal where the standard must rise. Then act. Over time, the man becomes less dependent upon praise. This is one of the clearest signs of restored self-respect. He still appreciates recognition, but he no longer requires it to continue. He knows whether the work was honest. He knows whether the promise was kept. He knows whether fear was faced. This private knowledge gives him steadiness. Criticism also loses some of its power. He can examine it without surrendering his identity. If it is true, he uses it. If it is false, he lets it pass. He no longer needs every man to approve because he is not living from every man's opinion. His conscience, purpose, and conduct have become stronger judges. This is how a man rises quietly, not through noise, performance, or grand claims. He rises because his word becomes dependable, his dignity becomes guarded, his duty becomes faced, his speech becomes constructive, and his associations become worthy. The 5 losses are reversed through 5 recoveries. He recovers trust by keeping promises. He recovers dignity by establishing boundaries. He recovers courage by facing duty. He recovers mental power by governing speech. He recovers direction by choosing association wisely. These recoveries do not merely repair the past. They prepare the man for greater responsibility. A man who respects himself can be trusted with more because he is less likely to sell his principles for comfort, praise, or fear. He becomes capable of wealth without waste, influence without vanity, authority without cruelty, and opportunity without carelessness. But greater responsibility will test every recovery. More money will test self-command. Greater influence will test humility. More praise will test whether the man still listens to correction. Greater freedom will test whether standards remain when supervision disappears. Self-respect must continue growing, or success itself may weaken it. Therefore, never consider the work finished. Each new level of life requires a stronger agreement with principle. The promise becomes larger. The boundary becomes more important. The duty becomes heavier. The speech carries greater influence. The associations shape wider consequences. The standard must rise with the responsibility. And when a man understands this, he stops seeking a final moment when discipline will no longer be necessary. He accepts self-command as the price of freedom. He accepts correction as the price of growth. He accepts duty as the price of purpose. He accepts wise separation as the price of worthy association. He accepts truth as the price of self-respect. From that acceptance comes peace. Not the peace of ease, but the peace of alignment. The man is no longer fighting his conscience every day. His conduct is beginning to agree with what he knows. His decisions carry less shame. His promises carry more weight. His life may still be difficult, but he is no longer divided against himself. And a man who is no longer divided becomes powerful. His energy is not spent hiding, explaining, regretting, and escaping. It is gathered. It moves toward purpose. It turns past weakness into instruction, present duty into character, and future possibility into a definite aim. He does not need to pretend that he has never fallen. He stands with greater dignity because he has learned how to rise. That is the final truth. Self-respect is not something you find. It is something you build. It is built every time you keep your word, defend your dignity without hatred, face the duty fear presented, speak in service of purpose, and choose influences that call you upward. Build it long enough, and the man you once doubted becomes the man you can finally trust. And when the man you once doubted becomes the man you can finally trust, a new kind of strength enters his life. It is not loud. It does not need constant praise. It does not depend upon the approval of the crowd. It comes from private agreement between conscience and conduct. The man knows that his word has begun to carry weight, that his duties are no longer being avoided, that his dignity is no longer being traded for acceptance, and that his speech is no longer building a prison around his future. This strength must be protected. The old habits may return with familiar arguments. Delay will say, one broken promise will not matter. Fear will say, remain silent and keep the peace. Comfort will say, leave the difficult duty for another day. Complaint will say, you have suffered enough to justify defeat. Weak company will say, return to the old way, you were easier to understand then. Do not be surprised by these voices. They are not proof that you have failed. They are proof that the old life is testing whether it still has authority. Answer with conduct. Keep the promise. Speak the necessary truth. Face the duty. Govern the tongue. Choose the stronger association. Every time you do this, self-respect moves from recovery into identity. You no longer say, I am trying to become reliable. Reliability becomes the way you live. You no longer say, I hope to become courageous. Courage becomes your habit of turning toward what must be faced. You no longer say, I want better influences. You begin protecting the mental climate in which your purpose must grow. Do not confuse self-respect with perfection. A man of self-respect may still fail, but he does not hide from failure. He examines it. He corrects it. He learns from it. He returns to the law. The weak man uses failure as a reason to surrender. The strong man uses it as instruction. One mistake does not destroy dignity. Repeated excuse does. A man must also be careful after success begins to appear. Hardship may teach him discipline, but comfort may tempt him to forget it. He may begin breaking promises because life feels easier. He may accept poor conduct because he fears losing favor. He may avoid difficult decisions because his position appears secure. He may speak carelessly because people now listen. He may keep company with flatterers because praise feels pleasant. Success can take self-respect from a man just as quietly as failure if standards are lowered. Therefore, let greater opportunity produce greater responsibility. Let more money require wiser stewardship. Let more influence require cleaner speech. Let more authority require greater humility. Let greater freedom require stronger self-command. A man must never allow increase to make him smaller. Remember the 5 losses. A man loses respect for himself when his word becomes cheap, when his dignity becomes negotiable, when duty is repeatedly avoided, when his speech becomes an instrument of defeat, and when his associations continually strengthen weakness. He recovers respect by reversing each law. He keeps his word. He establishes boundaries. He faces what must be faced. He speaks in agreement with purpose. He chooses influences that call him upward. These acts are simple, but they are not easy. That is why they possess power. Each act says, I will no longer live beneath what I know. That sentence, supported by action, can rebuild a man from the inside. So stop waiting for the crowd to restore your worth. Stop waiting for praise, permission, or a perfect season. Begin in private. Keep one promise today. Refuse one humiliation. Face one neglected duty. Correct one defeated sentence. Leave one weakening influence behind. Then repeat the process tomorrow. A man does not recover self-respect through one grand moment. He recovers it through daily evidence. And when that evidence becomes a habit, the man stands differently. He trusts his own word. He meets difficulty without hiding. He no longer begs life to treat him as valuable because his conduct has become proof that he has finally learned to treat himself that way.